Have you ever noticed how a lone tree in a vast open field commands a certain reverence? It stands there, solitary, its roots digging deep into the earth, its branches stretching towards the infinite sky, seemingly untouched by the chatter of a forest. A man with no friends is much like that tree, not necessarily lonely, but alone. Imagine standing in an open field where a single tree rises against the horizon. It is neither flanked by companions nor shielded by a forest canopy. There it stands, seemingly untouched by the noise of a crowded grove, unbowed by the pressures of proximity. You can't help but notice it. Its solitude isn't a lack, it's a presence, a statement of its own. It demands your attention, not by seeking it, but by being unapologetically itself, rooted in its own space, in its own silence. This lone tree has weathered storms without leaning on others for support. Its roots dig deeper into the earth, not for competition, but for survival. There is a kind of elegance in its isolation, as though its solitude isn't just an accident of circumstance, but a deliberate choice. Its branches stretch wide, embracing not just the light above, but the vast emptiness around it. And in that emptiness it finds something others might overlook: freedom. The freedom to grow without comparison, to exist without judgment, to be without needing. But this freedom comes with a certain weight. The lone tree doesn't have the comforting whispers of a forest to drown out the howling winds. When the storm comes, it must stand firm on its own, bending but not breaking, swaying but not uprooted. Its strength is tested in ways that trees within the safety of the grove might never know. Yet there is resilience in this solitude, a quiet fortitude born not from the support of others, but from the tree's own resolve to endure, to thrive, even when the world feels empty. Now, think about this tree not as a symbol of loneliness, but as a testament to independence. It does not grow to impress or to belong, it grows because that's what trees do. Its leaves turn toward the sun, not because it competes for light, but because it recognizes the source of life and reaches for it. And in its reaching it becomes something extraordinary, not defined by what surrounds it, but by the simple act of being. As you look closer, you might notice that the solitary tree isn't entirely alone. Birds nest in its branches, insects hum around its roots, and the wind weaves through its leaves, whispering secrets of the world. Its stillness draws life to it, and in its quiet way it becomes a gathering point, a silent sanctuary. This kind of companionship doesn't clamor for attention, it simply exists, as natural and effortless as the tree itself. So when we see that tree standing in its solitude, we're drawn to it not out of pity, but out of wonder. There's something magnetic about its singularity, something that speaks to the part of us that yearns to be free from the noise of conformity. It stands there, a quiet reminder that to be alone is not to be empty, but to be full of the world in a way that is rare and profound. The tree doesn't seek friends, yet it finds connection in the most unexpected places, not through proximity, but through presence. When you look into a mirror, what do you see? Is it truly you, or is it a version shaped by the reflection's limitations? Friendship in its essence often functions as a mirror. Friends show us parts of ourselves that we might overlook, amplify our qualities, and sometimes challenge us to see flaws we might rather ignore. They reflect back the person we present to the world, helping us craft a sense of identity. But the question lingers: if you strip away that mirror, does the self still remain intact, or does it dissolve into uncertainty? Every friendship is a dialogue, a subtle exchange of affirmations and contradictions. It's through these interactions that we begin to understand ourselves. When a friend laughs at our jokes, agrees with our opinions, or gently disputes our beliefs, it's as if they're polishing the mirror, sharpening the clarity of the image we see. But how much of that image is truly ours? How much of it is shaped by the reflections we've collected, the feedback we've grown to depend on? Without friends, the mirror vanishes, the world grows quieter, and the echoes we've relied on fade. It can feel disorienting, as though the room you've always known has suddenly gone dark. And yet in that darkness lies an intriguing possibility. Without the reflections of others, you're left with yourself, raw and unfiltered. It's here, in this unlit space, that the deeper work begins the search for who you are beyond what others have shown you. But does this absence of mirrors mean an absence of clarity? Or does it, in some paradoxical way, bring about a truer vision of the self? Imagine standing at the edge of a still lake. With no friends around to hold the mirror, the water becomes your reflection. It's fluid, shifting with the breeze, never fixed. You see yourself not as a static entity, but as something ever-changing, something alive. This reflection doesn't require approval or validation, it simply exists, as natural as the ripples on the surface. What's fascinating is how friendships can both anchor and obscure us. A close friend can ground us, provide a sense of belonging and understanding. Yet they can also bind us to an identity we outgrow. How often do we cling to relationships not because they nurture us, but because they preserve a version of us we're afraid to let go of? The mirror, for all its brilliance, can become a prison, reflecting not who we are, but who we once were, trapping us in familiarity. And so the absence of friendship isn't always an emptiness, it's an invitation. Without the constant reflections, the self is free to shift, to evolve, to explore uncharted depths. The mirror may no longer be there, but the light remains. And in that light you might find a vision not shaped by others, but illuminated by something far more profound, your own unguarded existence. Aloneness has always carried a peculiar weight in society's eyes, as though being solitary is a condition to be fixed rather than a state to be embraced. From an early age we are told that happiness is found in togetherness, groups of friends, bustling families, communities brimming with activity. The world whispers that to be alone is to be incomplete, a puzzle missing its vital pieces. But who decides this? Is it truly a flaw to walk through life without companions, or is it merely a fear society projects onto the solitary? Think about how much of life revolves around connection. Social norms dictate that we should seek out relationships, build networks, and maintain a certain presence among others. Solitude, in contrast, is often portrayed as a punishment. Look at the language we use. Lonely, isolated, cut off. These words carry shadows, as if aloneness itself was something to escape from. Rarely do we celebrate it as an act of freedom or a deliberate choice, as stepping away from the noise to hear something deeper. But why is society so uneasy with the idea of being alone? Perhaps it's because aloneness challenges the very fabric of how we measure worth. In a world built on interaction, the solitary individual doesn't fit neatly into the equation. They aren't contributing to the group dynamic, aren't playing the roles expected of them, and that makes them unpredictable. There's something unsettling about someone who finds contentment in their own company, who doesn't seek the validation or companionship that others crave. It forces us to question whether our own need for connection is a choice or a dependency. Even the stories we tell reinforce the narrative. Heroes are surrounded by allies, their triumphs celebrated in the company of others. The villain, on the other hand, is often cast as a lone figure, brooding in shadow, their solitude a sign of their estrangement from humanity. These archetypes seep into our thinking, making us believe that to be alone is to be other, to be somehow less. Yet is it possible that these tales miss the truth? That there is a quiet strength, even heroism, in choosing to walk alone? What's fascinating is how aloneness often breeds discomfort, not just in the one experiencing it, but in those observing it. A person dining alone at a restaurant, sitting silently on a park bench, or traveling by themselves often becomes a subject of curiosity, or even pity. People project their own fears onto the solitary figure, assuming their solitude must be unchosen, that they must long for the company they seem to lack. Yet for the one who has embraced aloneness, these assumptions couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, aloneness can be a kind of liberation, a stepping away from the pressures and expectations that come with constant connection. It's not about rejecting society, but about redefining one's place within it. To be alone is to have the space to think, to feel, to be without the need to perform. And while society may struggle to see the beauty in that, the solitary individual knows aloneness is not an absence, but a presence of vast, expansive presence, where the noise quiets and the self comes into focus. There is a unique kind of companionship that exists in nature, one that asks for nothing and offers everything. It's not the kind that speaks in words or relies on gestures, but one that hums softly in the background of existence, waiting for those who listen. To sit by a river, to stand beneath an ancient tree, or to walk through a meadow alive with the chatter of unseen creatures, these moments remind us that we are never truly alone. Nature, in its quiet, unassuming way, becomes a companion that doesn't seek to mirror us, but simply allows us to be. Think about the wind for a moment. It wraps itself around you, touches your face, and whispers through the leaves. It doesn't ask who you are or what you've done. It doesn't care about your triumphs or your failures. And yet it knows you. The wind carries with it the scent of the earth, the salt of the sea, and the warmth of distant lands. When it moves through you, it's as if the whole world has reached out, not to demand, but to connect. It's a touch so gentle, so constant, that we often overlook it, but it is always there. Then there's the sunlight, an unspoken companion that greets you each day. It doesn't judge whether you rise early to meet it or linger in its warmth as it arcs across the sky. Sunlight simply offers itself, spilling gold into your life without hesitation. It dances on water, filters through the leaves, and paints shadows that shift as you move. When the sun sets, it leaves you with the quiet promise of return, a reassurance that, though the night may feel vast and empty, the light is never truly gone. Even the smallest corners of nature hold a kind of companionship. The quiet chirp of a cricket on a summer night, the rustling of leaves as a breeze passes through, or the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore, these sounds are more than background noise. They are the voices of a world alive, surrounding you with a symphony that doesn't demand attention but invites it. To be in nature is to be enveloped by a presence that doesn't seek to fill silence, but to remind you that silence itself is full. Animals, too, offer companionship without conditions. A bird perched on a branch, its song filling the air, sings not for applause, but because it must. A deer grazing in a clearing doesn't need your company to feel whole, but doesn't shy away from sharing its space with you. These creatures live alongside us, not in service or obligation, but as fellow travelers through the ebb and flow of existence. Their presence reminds us of something profound. Life is not a solitary journey, even when it feels that way. And then there is the night sky, a vast, sprawling canvas of stars that seems to stretch into eternity. To stand beneath it is to feel both small and infinite, a paradox that only nature can conjure. The stars do not blink in recognition of your presence, yet their light reaches across time and space to touch you. In their silence, they remind you of your place in something larger, something timeless. This is the companionship nature offers, not one of words or expectations, but of being. A constant presence that asks only that you open your senses and let it in. It's easy to fall into the belief that we are separate. From the moment we're born, we're taught to distinguish ourselves, our name, our possessions, our accomplishments. These things form the walls of identity, and within those walls we feel safe. But are they real? Is the self we cling to truly distinct from the world around us, or is that boundary just an illusion we've learned to accept? When you step outside yourself for even a moment, you might begin to see that separateness is not a truth, but a perspective, a useful fiction that dissolves the more closely you examine it. Consider the breath you take right now. The air that fills your lungs isn't yours, it's shared. It's been part of countless lives before yours, plants, animals, oceans, and stars. Every exhale becomes someone else's inhale, a cycle that binds us invisibly to everything around us. Yet we rarely notice this connection. We walk through life as if the air belongs to us, as if our breath isn't part of a greater rhythm. But isn't it remarkable that the very act of living ties you, moment by moment, to the entire world? Then there's the earth beneath your feet. You tread upon it, build upon it, shape it to your will. But the soil that crumbles in your hands isn't separate from you, it's in you. The food you eat, the water you drink, all arise from that same earth. It's not just the ground you walk on, it's the substance of your being. The body you call your own is borrowed from the earth, every atom a gift of stars and soil. To see yourself as apart from it is to ignore the quiet truth that you are, quite literally, made of the world. Even your thoughts, the most private part of your existence, are not entirely your own. Language, culture, experience, all these shape the way you think and feel. The words in your mind were taught to you by others, the ideas sparked by things you've seen, heard, or read. Your individuality is a tapestry woven from threads that come from everywhere and everyone. To say I am separate is to overlook the fact that who you are is inseparable from the world that surrounds you. And then there's the sky, the vastness that stretches endlessly above us. When you look at it, do you see yourself as beneath it, or do you feel a part of it? The clouds drift, the stars shine, the sun warms, and you exist within all of it, not apart from it. The rain that falls touches your skin, but also fills rivers and nourishes trees. It's not yours, and yet it is. The sky doesn't end at the horizon, it envelops you, holds you in its vast embrace. To think you are separate from it is to forget that your very life depends on its existence. Even in solitude, the illusion of separateness breaks down. Sit quietly and you'll hear the hum of life around you, the rustle of leaves, the chirp of insects, the distant murmur of a world that goes on, whether or not you notice. You might feel alone, but are you truly? Or are you simply immersed in a different kind of connection, one that doesn't demand your attention but offers itself nonetheless? To feel separate is to miss the quiet truth that everything, from the smallest breath to the farthest star, is part of the same endless, interconnected whole. Not every path in life is meant to be walked with others. Some journeys are solitary by nature, carved out of silence, introspection, and independence. To take a different path, one without the usual companions, is not a sign of failure or deficiency, but a quiet act of courage. It is to step away from the familiar noise of community and embrace the vast, uncharted landscapes of the self. The world often celebrates togetherness, but the solitary path has its own music, a rhythm that speaks only to those who dare to listen. The allure of a solitary path is not in its ease, but in its freedom. Without the weight of others' expectations, there is space to breathe, to explore, to stumble, and rise again without scrutiny. It's a path that belongs entirely to the one walking it. No compromises, no adjustments, no detours to accommodate another's journey. And yet this freedom comes with a price, the echoes of your own footsteps, the absence of a guiding voice. But perhaps that's the point. To truly know the path, you must first trust your own instincts, your own way of moving through the world. There is an honesty in walking alone that cannot be found in the crowd. On this path, there is no one to hide behind, no one to blame, no one to praise. Your choices are your own, as are the consequences. This is both terrifying and liberating. The solitary path forces you to confront the raw, unvarnished truth of who you are. It strips away the masks we wear for others and leaves you with only yourself. And in that starkness there is a beauty, a rare and profound clarity that can only come when the noise of the world fades into the background. This path, different as it is not devoid of connection. The trees that line the way, the stars overhead, the quiet whisper of the wind, all these are companions of a different kind. They ask for nothing, demand nothing, yet their presence is constant, unwavering. Walking alone does not mean walking in emptiness. It means finding connection in unexpected places. It means understanding that the world is alive, vibrant, and intertwined, even when human voices are absent. Those who walk this path often face judgment. Society, with its insistence on togetherness, views the solitary traveler with suspicion or pity. People wonder why walk alone when the world is full of others. But the question misses the essence of the journey. Walking alone is not a rejection of others, but an affirmation of oneself. It is choosing to listen to your own voice, to follow your own rhythm, even when it diverges from the crowd. And this divergence is not a loss, but again the discovery of a route uniquely your own. The path may be quiet, but it is never empty. The silence becomes a canvas, painted with the hues of thought and feeling. The solitude becomes a mirror, reflecting not the faces of others, but the contours of your own soul. And with each step, the path reveals itself a new and unfolding journey, not dictated by the expectations of others, but shaped by the choices you make. This is the gift of a different path, not better, not worse, but yours and yours alone.